Hey y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. And if you're new around here, hello and welcome. My name is Katie Marie, and we are diving into my best of beauty when it comes to eyeshadow palettes for 2020, and I cannot wait. I have been so very excited to get this started. We are going to be having so much fun this week. I know it technically started yesterday talking about my most disappointing palettes of 2020. And if you haven't seen that video, I will leave it linked up here and down in the description box, but that should have went up yesterday. But today we're going to be talking about my top 15 palettes from 2020, and boy do I have a lot to talk about. I cannot wait. This series and the next 5 videos after this I'm going to be doing is inspired by Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner. She's currently doing this on her channel, so if you like this sort of setup, definitely make sure you check her out. I will leave her link down below in the description box. But basically what I'm going to be doing is in today's video I'm going to go from 15 to number 6, count down and work my way all the way up from number 15 to number 6, and share with you guys the palettes that just stood out to me the most out of over 60 palettes that I tried in 2020. These are the top 15, and when we get to number 6 we're going to close out this video, and tomorrow I'm going to come back and share with you my number 5 palette, and I'm going to do a look with it, and then the next day I'll share with you my number 4 palette, do a look with it, and so on until we work our way all the way up to the number 1 palette that stood out to me the most from 2020, and I'll do a look with it. So like I said, this is inspired by Annette. She does this over on her channel, and I think it's so much fun to get to try and guess what palette's going to make it at the top, and then also to see a look that she does with it. So that is what we're going to be doing this year on my channel, and I hope you guys are excited. Definitely let me know down below in the comments if you are, and feel free to guess. Once you've seen my top 15, you guys, if you've been following me for any length of time, you know what I like, you know what palettes I've been raving about all year, so feel free down in the comments to guess what can my top 5 be. If you want to guess the order, go for it, but if you want to just guess which ones you think are going to make it towards the top 5 that we're going to talk about this week, feel free to guess that below in the comments. But yeah, we can just go ahead and jump right in. We're going to be going from 15 all the way up to number 6, as I said, and share with you guys the palettes that made it to the very top. Okay, so it was so very hard to try and rank all my palettes, even just top 15, but ranking palettes I just find so hard because depending on like what I feel at the moment, I feel like can depend on where one palette might beat out another palette. So I'm sorry if there's a little bit of like discrepancy, I guess you could say, if you go back and watch my older videos when I rank them and be like, hey, when you initially reviewed that, you put that palette ahead of that palette, but now at the end of the year you've switched them around and put that palette ahead of the other palette. There could be moments like that, and basically my criteria when I thought back over all the palettes of 2020, I kind of took in like color story, I took in quality of the palette, but the biggest thing that stood out to me and kind of made me put palettes higher up and help me rank them is what palettes do I remember and have the best and fondest memories of. These are palettes that I enjoyed working with them, I enjoyed all the looks that I got from them, and I want to go back. And I think that's the biggest like call to me when it comes to like what's a favorite palette, which palette am I gonna like a year from now, and which palette do I just want to go back to and create more looks from, which palette did I not have enough time with, did I just enjoy so much I'm so inspired to create more. And that's kind of what made it to the top 15. So that's the order I did it through. I'm sorry I put this spiel after the little intro, but I always forget my little disclaimer spiel, but I wanted to put that in there, so now we can jump right in, starting at number 15. And for my number 15, it is going to be the Midas Cosmetics Smoky Glow Palette. Now, I'm not putting it at number 15 like quality-wise, because I think quality-wise it's fantastic, but mainly color story-wise, because when we're talking about color story-wise, you guys know I'm not super into pinks and reds. However, this palette made it to the top 15, so there is definitely an exception because this palette stood out to me so very much. It has the most awesome red, the most awesome like corally shade up here. Those two colors really sold this palette for me. Also, I can't forget Nutty or Dofa. Both of those are so unique and both of them are so beautiful. They definitely make the palette for me. So among those 4 shades, while a lot of this palette is like, oh, pinks and reds, I'm just not super into. However, having those 4 in them really just takes this palette to another level for me. I find so inspiring, and I enjoyed every single look that I did with this palette. And looking back at this palette, thinking about the looks that I did, I want to create more. I had such a good time. I felt so pretty in all of them. It's like, yes, that palette just stood out to me so much. I used it at the beginning of this year, and I still think back very fondly towards this palette, so I feel like that right there is a testament to how good this palette is and how much I enjoyed it, so I had to include it in my top 15 at the number 15 spot. I forgot to say in the beginning, again, I always forget, you guys, I'm so very sorry, but I just want to throw this in here. If you like the look, I did do a video already with this. It should already be live on my channel. I'll leave it linked up here, but it used the new Midas Cosmetics Artistry Volume 2 palette. If you're at all curious to see how I got the look or to hear my thoughts on it, my first impression thoughts. Anyway, moving on to number 14, I put the Nomad Lake Como palette right here. This palette, it's so very beautiful. I feel feel like when I look at this palette, you know, it's the bottom 6 that really grab me, and that's kind of one of the reasons I put it lower, because I do really like this formula, and I find the mattes just so buttery smooth to work with, and this blue is just so very bright, so smooth. Like I said, the quality of these shadows are amazing, but for me personally, the bottom 6 are what inspires me the most. I think I dabbled in this a little bit when I did this look, but when I open this palette, it's the bottom 6 that have it, my heart, and that my eyes go to, and that I'm inspired to use. So that's one of the reasons I put it a little bit lower, is because that top row I don't often consider when I look at this palette and when I'm doing looks with it. However, the quality of these is so very beautiful. The shimmers are definitely more subdued when it comes to shimmers. They're definitely not metallic like I like. Another reason why I put it a bit lower. But we're talking about these 3 mattes in the middle. They were beautiful. I loved every time I had to use any of these. They were a dream to blend out. They look so beautiful, so pigmented. They're gorgeous shades of blue and green. Absolutely loved it. So I had to give this palette a feature in my top 15, and I figured number 14 spot was where it is at, and I really enjoyed it. I forget which subscription box I got this from. I know it's so bad. I think it was Try Beauty box, but anyway, I'm so glad I have it. I'm so glad I got to use it. It is a fantastic palette. Next up, I'm going to name the Warrior 3 palette by Juvia's Place. This palette right here is so very inspiring when I open it. There are so many directions you can go, and I love the addition of these 2 shimmers. I feel like it gives this palette a really interesting twist with having so many mattes to work with, so many deep and rich toned mattes. I love that about it. It's very unique. It's not just all bright and very intense color on your face. Also too, there's some bright colors in there, but everything just has this depth to it that I really like, and the silver and the blue shimmer really add an interesting turn to it, and with the looks that I create with it, especially when I go kind of more of this warmer section up here with the greens and the orange and the yellow, and then popping a silver on it. It was just very different and interesting, and this is definitely a palette that I look back fondly on, and I want to create more looks with it because I'm very, very inspired. So have to give it to Juvia's Place. Their shimmers are so foiled and metallic looking. I absolutely love them, so I do enjoy working with them. They're that type of shimmer that I just love to have on my eyes, and then their mattes were very nice and easy to work with. I created a lot of really fun looks, and yeah, this was just a winner for me. Anytime I look back, I want to reach for it again and create more looks. Next up, we have the Lime Crime Venus 2 palette. I know I'm not saying numbers because I'm terrified of miscounting, so you're seeing them on the screen, but I don't trust myself to count. Anyway, it's going to be the Venus 2 palette. This palette right here, I enjoyed it so very much, so much more than I thought. Now, definitely for me, the duds in this palette were the shimmers. They were very, very subtle, like even more subtle than the Nomad's formula when it comes to shimmers. It was just subtle. However, this palette shines for me when it comes to the matte. The mattes were a dream to work with. They were so beautiful, so pigmented, and with these grungy colors, yes, I had such a good time. And also this pop of blue. The blue, when I first got it and when I first, was going to use it, I was like, what am I doing with the blue with all of these grungy tones? However, I created so many beautiful looks featuring that blue surrounded by the grungy tones. I thought it was beautiful and so very unique and fun and different, and yeah, it's a standout palette for sure from this past year. It's a palette that if you like grunge, this palette will give it to you. It doesn't have a lot of colors, doesn't have a lot of options, but I just felt like I was so inspired every time I went into this. I really played around with this palette, and I always enjoyed that about it, so that's another reason I wanted to put it so high. But yeah, it just was a standout palette from this past year. I really enjoyed it. I know for the first half of the year, this ranked really high because of how impressed I was, and even now looking back at it and thinking like, do I still think it's that impressive? I still am really impressed when I think back on it, and I do want to use it again, and yeah, it's just a fantastic palette. Next, I have to name the Poppi Cosmetics Neon Drip Palette. This right here is beautiful. If you are scared of neon eyeshadows and you don't want to dip into pigments or just super vibrant, definitely recommend this palette because their formula, the Poppi Cosmetics formula, is a lot more softer and more sheer, I guess is a better way to describe theirs. It's just more of a sheer color. So when it comes to neons, working with more sheer colors, I found it very friendly and easy to work with, and it wasn't so terrifying and scary to work with neons. And you still get very, very vibrant, very, very bright eye looks, but they're just not too crazy to blend and work with, and then not so crazy. I felt like it was a little bit more wearable, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I have so many fond memories. The shimmers are really pretty. They're definitely more of a thin, kind of wet-like looking formula. They make me think of the Glam Light formula, but not as much sparkle to it. I mean, some of them have a lot of sparkle to it, so I really enjoyed this palette as a whole. I thought it was very pretty, very impressed, and I used it again, not too long ago, a couple months ago, to put a tutorial on Instagram because someone had asked to see one, and I really enjoyed it. Once again, reaching back for it. It is a fantastic palette, very well made, very beautiful packaging, and yeah, I could not do my top 15 palettes of 2020 without mentioning this beauty. Next up, how many of you guessed that this would make it to my top 15? This is the BH Cosmetics Sweet Shop Pistachio palette. I had to include this baby in here. This is so very beautiful. I created so many fun looks. I have a 3 looks 1 palette on my channel, but I want to create more, and even looking back and looking at it now, it's like, oh my goodness, I can create so many beautiful looks. It has gorgeous, gorgeous shimmers that look so reflective and so metallic looking and wet looking on the eyes, especially like this shade if you wet it. Ugh, so beautiful. And then a nice array of mattes. You got a really deep matte to really go and deepen up and get a really smoked out outer corner, which you guys know I love. So all around, this palette just had everything when it comes to a good monochromatic green look that can give you a little bit of grunge, a little bit of vibrancy in it, and even, you know, more of those kind of minty green. It's kind of all right here in this one palette, and you know, BH Cosmetics did a fantastic job. They really hit out of the park, and ever since I tried this, BH Cosmetics is now on my radar. I am eyeing every one of the releases, and anytime they have a color story that intrigues me, I definitely want to get it because this impressed me so very much. And yeah, even though I am done using this, I definitely want to go back to this palette because it was such a beautiful palette. Next up, I'm going to name the Made by Mitchelle Feet on the Ground palette here. This is such a beautiful palette, and honestly, I think if the formula was a little bit more, just impressed me a little bit more, or if the cost was a little bit less, I probably would have ranked this a lot higher because the color story is definitely me, and I love the uniqueness of this color story being so very grunge, but having those pops of very interesting colors in there to give you something different. Even with these tones here, I feel like it gives it, it's not just a grungy green palette, it gives it a lot of interest, and then it has these more neon bright colors to it, and it's just, the color story really inspires me. Every time I open this, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I want to create like 15 looks with this. However, because of not to say that the formula is bad, I definitely don't want that to come across, but it's just the formula, it didn't impress me enough to warrant the price tag, I think is why I struggle with putting it any higher, even though I love the color story. So I figured right here in my countdown would be a perfect place for it because I was very pleased with all the looks that I did. But just when I think about the formula, I've mentioned it all in my review, so I'm not going to rehash that here, but I feel a little bit bad not putting this higher because I love the color story and I like the looks that I got with it, and I thought the formula is nice. However, since it doesn't blow me out of the water and the price tag is so high, that's honestly my struggle. Because I mean, as much as I love eyeshadow palettes, and I feel like it's not infrequent for me to pay around a $50 price tag for palettes, with it being over that by a lot, including shipping, and then for the quality to just kind of be like, I don't know, if this was like a $30 palette, I feel like I would have put it a lot higher. That's basically what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm going to put it right here in the countdown. I was very impressed with it. Regardless of, you know, my struggle with where to place it, I was very impressed, very pleased, and I definitely wanted to include it in my countdown for palettes, best of palettes for 2020. Okay, next up is the Ivette Beauty, the Autumn palette. Now, I do want to put a little disclaimer out there in saying that if this was a permanent palette, I think I would have put it higher and it would have been one of the palettes I created a look with. But since you can't get this anymore, I was like, you know, I could do a look with it and, you know, share with you guys how much I like it, but you can't get it anymore. So because it is so limited edition, I did decide to drop it back a little bit and put it right here at this spot because, like I said, you're just not gonna be able to get a hold of it anymore. But if it was a permanent palette, I could have seen it getting into the top 5 for sure. But regardless of that, this is a phenomenal palette, and just because it's not in the top 5 doesn't mean that I don't like it. All these palettes, top 15, blew me out of the water. I want to create 15 more looks with all of them, and this is definitely one of those palettes. I really enjoyed this color story. The formula I found very easy to work with and very pigmented and very vibrant. It's an all matte palette, which you guys know I do love my all matte palettes, and it has a gorgeous array of colors. I want to say I created 4 looks with this, and I still want to create more. It's just so very inspiring. There's so many mixes of very vibrant colors that all scream fall that I just feel like I have, like, you know, like I said, 10, 15 more looks that I could do with this, and I'm just so sad I don't have the time to do that. But it is a fantastic palette. As I said, this is limited edition, so I don't want to yammer too on and on, but Ivette Beauty, I have my eye on that brand so very hard for 2021. I cannot wait to see what she comes out in 2021, and I really hope she starts to release more permanent collections, more permanent palettes to her brand, so that I can be able to recommend them and tell you guys, like, this palette's really good, go get it, because this palette's really good, but you can't get it. I mean, you may be able to get it right now at the time of me posting this, but I don't know for how long. This was an autumn release, so I definitely know she's not holding on to it very long, but this is a great palette. I'm so very happy to have it. I'm never wanting to let go of it, and it's definitely a palette I want to revisit soon. Okay, and on the heels of talking about that beauty, since this is an all matte palette, I'm kind of cheating here, but I'm going to put an all shimmer palette in this category as well, or in this number as well. I know that's cheating, but I do want to include this palette. This is the Flower Beauty Jungle Lights palette. I love this palette so very much when I used it. It is an all shimmer palette though, and that's why I decided to pair these two together, because I was like, this is all matte. this is all shimmer. Anyway, I'm just gonna throw it in here. I know it's a bit of a cheat in sneaking another palette in there, but I just could not do my top 15 without mentioning this palette, and it is so beautiful. This is definitely a palette you have to be a little bit careful because if you go on too heavy, it can get a little textured and like, you know, fall out throughout the day because it's so textured, it just like chunks off. But if you go in nice and easy, if you use a glitter glue underneath, it is a beautiful palette. It'll give you the most gorgeous shimmers on your eyes. They will look foiled, wet, and so sparkly. There's a lot of dimension in some of these, and they're just, I'll swatch one just so you guys can see how very shiny, like, oh my goodness, I know I said I'd swatch one, but like, I gotta swatch two. They're so beautiful, and they're just so pigmented too. I think that's the thing that just I can't get over is just like how pigmented and shiny they are. They're beautiful, so I know that's a bit of a cheat, but I do want to include this in the number with the Ivette Beauty. So we have an all matte palette here and an all shimmer palette. Okay, for my number 7, this is another one that I put a little bit lower. I didn't put in my top 5 because it is limited edition, but this is the DJ's Unique Boutique, the Reasons palette. This impressed me so very much. You guys have heard me rave on and on about it. I love it so much, but because I don't think it's available any longer, or if it is, she only has a couple more in stock, but once it's gone, and that's the biggest reason why I didn't put in my top 5. But this palette right here is beautiful, and even though it's not my top 5, I still absolutely loved it. I created so many looks. I think 5? I can't even remember. I can't remember. I'm so bad at remembering numbers. So I created a bunch of looks with it, but this is definitely a palette that I can create so many more if I only had the time, if I only had 500 days in one day, I would sit here and create at least 20 with them. I know that's ridiculous. Anyway, this is a fantastic palette. The shimmers aren't anything like crazy metallic, definitely not foiled or anything on my eyes, but they're definitely not super soft and like a subtle shimmer. So they're just a nice, very pigmented shimmer, which I appreciate in a palette. If it's not gonna be metallic like I like it to be, I at least want it to be a pigmented shimmer that has a little bit of, you know, a little bit of shine to it. And that's what these give me. And yeah, everything about this palette I like. I've talked about it so much recently because this is a newer palette, so I won't bore you guys because I'm sure you guys are a little bored, but this is a fantastic palette. I love it so much, and yeah, I had to include it in my best of beauty or best of palettes for 2020. Okay, for my top 6, I can't believe we're here already, but top 6, did you guys guess it? This is Give Me Glow's Extra Spicy palette. This palette I love so much. I wanted to, like, I struggled so long to decide what would be in my top 5, and I almost put this in my top 5, but I decided to put it at number 6 because I do remember the reds being, 1, very, very similar, like in color, but 2, also a little bit tricky. I remember having a little bit, not issues, but they wanted to stick a little bit, so I had to be careful. So I was like, you know what, there were those issues, and maybe I'd, you know, encounter that again if I went into this palette. So let me just put it right here at number 6. Still saying it's a fantastic palette, but that's how I help justify it and where to put it, because like I said, this almost made it into my top 5. I was almost doing a look with it because I love this palette so much. I had such a great time. These shimmers, per usual, when it comes to Give Me Glow, and honestly, it kind of reminds me of the Flower Beauty. This formula, if you like this formula, you'll like Give Me Glow, or if you like the Give Me Glow shimmers, you'll like Flower Beauty. Anyway, their shimmer formula is so beautiful, like so very intense, like, oh my goodness, so just beautiful and blinding. Can you even see it there? I always swatch in the worst places. I do realize that. And I love these two right here, like paired with a red. I just felt like a Cheeto. I love that. I mean, maybe that's weird to want to make your eyes look like Cheetos, but I absolutely did, and I absolutely loved it. And this is a palette that I definitely wish I could spend more time with, create a couple more looks with it, because it was just so very fun. If you like reds and oranges, this is the palette for you. And if you like Give Me Glow's formula, which I do, you'll love this palette. And it's a fantastic palette, and definitely had to make it into the top of my palettes because I enjoyed it so very much. And yeah, it made it to my top 6 of 2020 when it comes to the eyeshadow palettes that I tried. So you know that I love this, and it always sits back here, and it's kind of sad that it's not back there recently because I've been doing this, but now that I've shared with you guys that it's my top 6 of 2020, now it can go back to its home. But yeah, this is a phenomenal palette. Definitely love it. Alright you guys, so there we are. Those are my top 15 to number 6 palettes for 2020. What do you guys think? It was so hard. Like, it was so hard to figure out where to put all these, which palettes to choose, but I finally narrowed it down to top 15, and I finally, I think, narrowed it down to the order I wanted in. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you're able to guess any of these palettes, like when you're thinking over my collection and you were like, oh yeah, she loved that palette, is definitely going to be here in her top 15. Let me know that, and as I already said, feel free to guess down below what my top 5 will be. And if you want to see what the number 5 palette was, make sure you tune back tomorrow around this time, and I will be sharing with you guys a tutorial and finally revealing what my number 5 palette will be. And as I said, Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner did inspire this, so definitely check her out if you guys like this video. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to continue to getting more content from me, I'm over on Instagram. I'm LadyKatie92 over there, and I post close-up eye pictures, product shots, that sort of thing. But yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video tomorrow. Bye guys.